What's good YouTube, it's André from I'm a Music Mogul. Welcome to a brand new video. Today we're going to go ahead and remake from scratch Kanye West. I can't wait. The tempo for this one is 77 beats per minute, and the track is produced by Kanye West, Israel, André, Troutman, FutureSelf, and Rashon, RaMu, Murph. All right, let's go and kick things off with that organ. So for that sound, I'm going to hit Control-Command-P and bring in Logic's Alchemy. I'm going to start off with a preset here. The preset is called 60s Vintage Organ, this one right over here. We'll leave the settings as is. We're not going to adjust it really at all. We're just going to go ahead and put in that pattern, and then we'll get to some sound design and shape that sound with some effects plugins. All right, so there's the main chord progression right there. It's going to make it a little bit more realistic. I'm going to select all of my notes here. I'm going to go to functions. I'm going to MIDI transform. We're going to go over to random velocity. I'm just going to set a velocity here, just a range. Let's go from like 100. Okay, we'll go 40 to 100. We'll select and operate. You'll notice that it gave us random velocities for each note here. Just so it's not playing all the same velocity. All right, so that of course is a little dry for a yay organ. So let's get to some sound design. So the first thing that we're gonna do here is bring in a rotor effect. So we're gonna go to modulation. It's off my screen here, but we'll bring in the rotor cabinet. We'll start off with a preset here, the gig rig preset. The only thing we're going to adjust here is the type. So we're going to select our type and we're going to go over to wood. This gives it a different flavor to it. All right, next let's go ahead and bring in EQ just to shape up the sound. So I'm going to double click on the EQ or just single click that. And I'm going to bring in a preset here. It's off my screen here as well. It's called the Refresh Roads preset. Except I'm going to take out some of the top end. Take out that resonance. And next, let's go ahead and add in some detuning to that sound. So for that, what we're going to do, we're going to go Control-Command-P and bring in Logic's tape delay. This will give it sort of like that sample type of flavor that you're looking for. We're going to bring down the feedback. I'm going to pull up the wet value, bring down the dry value. I'll bring this up to 1 Hertz. I'm going to bring down the flutter. We're not going to use that. And you'll see what happens as I pull up the LFO intensity here. So you get instability to the pitch there. So we're not going to go too hard with this. We're just going to go about like a 30% intensity here. I'm just going to open up this filter here. All right, next let's go ahead and make this more of that sampled sound once again. We're going to bring in Logic's chorus. And we will bring in a preset here, the Guitar Summer preset. All right, gives like that old school vibe. And then we'll add a little bit of distortion with Control-Command-P. We'll bring in Logic's Bit Crusher. We use the default setting that loads up. I'm just going to pull the resolution up to 9 bits. Pull down the drive, and you're going to hear some noise in there. Gives it some hiss. Like it's a sampled sound. Nothing too crazy. All right, so with all of our effects, started with that. All right, next let's go ahead and bring in that piano that's layered on top of that organ. So create a new software instrument track. We'll go over to our library browser over here. We'll go over to piano. Where is it over here? Here, acoustic piano. And we'll bring in the Concert Grand. The chord progression here is the same, just the voicing is a little different. So we're gonna do that G minor chord here. And it's gonna play it, repeat itself on the 1 and the 2 bar, and then we're gonna go back to that C minor chord. But like I said, it's gonna be a different voicing here. It's a little low in octave. I'm just gonna pitch it up 1 octave. All right, so that happens on top, but what I'm gonna do here on the EQ, I don't want it so bright on the top end here, so I'm just going to filter that out. Kind of get a little resonance on the peaks there. And then later on top of that, we get it choir. So I'm gonna go ahead and create a new software instrument track. I'm gonna just unsolo this. I don't know why everything is soloed here. Then what we're gonna do here is go to orchestral. We'll go over to choir, and we'll go over to the boys chamber ensemble. We're gonna use the same chord progression from that piano. So I'm just gonna go ahead and copy that down, and it sounds like this. Except I'm gonna pitch that up 1 octave. I'm just gonna put a limiter here on my stereo out because it's kind of clipping there. All right, so we want to filter out that sound just so it's in the background, just gives us the tone that we need. So I'm gonna open up Logic's EQ here, and I'm gonna take out a lot of the bottom end. I just really want that tone. I'm gonna put a shelf here and take out a lot of that top stuff here. And we just layer it in. Just gives it that tone that we need. Fills it up. And then we're gonna go ahead and group all these tracks together just so we could manipulate the sound as a whole. So I'm gonna go Shift and select all of my tracks, go Shift Command G to group everything together. And the first thing that we're gonna do is just bring in Logic's Fat Effects. And what we're gonna do here is take off this, we'll take off the distortion, we'll leave the compression, we'll leave the output on our filter. I'm just gonna go and change it over to dirt, just to give it some gritty sound to it. But I don't want it that much. So what we're gonna do here is just pull down the mix to about like 10 o'clock-ish. Just to make it a little dirty sounding. And then what we're gonna do is bring in an EQ, take out a lot of the low end. We'll take out some of the top end. All right, next, let's get to that bass. For that, we're gonna start off with a default sound in Logic. So what we're gonna do is open up our library browser, we're gonna go over to bass, and we're gonna bring in the Vintage Soul preset. So the pattern I'm about to draw is an interpolation of the bass from the Supremes' You Can't Hurry Love. Kanye didn't actually sample the Supremes because I'm not sure if he got clearance for that, so he just interpolated that sample. It's easier to clear a sample when it's interpolated or you replay it. So that's what we're gonna do right now for the bass. And the vocals was done that way as well, but we'll get to that in a moment. Except over here we get a little bit of a lick. All right, and that is our bass. Next, we're gonna get to the vocals. Now the vocals, many think it was AI or Kanye singing it, but it's not. If you take a look at the credits here, we're gonna scroll down here, you're gonna see the background vocals was done by FutureSelf. So what I did here was just sampled that background vocals from the track itself, and I'm gonna bring it in here. Now there are a couple different sections that was sung, that was interpolated from the Supremes' You Can't Hurry Love by FutureSelf here. So we're just gonna get to one main part, and then in the mix or in the arrangement, I'll show you all the other stems as well. Now what's really interesting here is they didn't just re-sing in the track or just re-record it. They kind of recorded it, chopped it up, and made it feel like a sample as well, which was really, really well done. I can't bear to Now maybe it's time to get to some drums. So I'm going to open up the Bully Deconstructed Kit. If you are interested in the drum sounds from Bully, link will be down below. But I'm going to go over to the I Can't Wait folder, and I'm going to go bring in all of the samples that we need here. So for this tape hiss, that's just some tape hiss that was happening in the background of the track. So I'm going to bring that in here. And what I'm going to do is just loop that up, and I'll probably bring it down in volume because I raised the gain here so that you can use it as a sample in other productions. But I'm just going to lower this here.
I can't bear to live my life alone. I grow impatient for love.
It just adds to that sampled vibe. And then what we're going to do here is take all of our samples that we need, and we'll start building out that that drum pattern. So for one, we'll just start with the snare. It's really easy. It's on the 2s and 4s.
I can't bear to live my life alone. I grow impatient for love.
And on the snare, I'm just going to go ahead and add in some reverb here. We'll go to Logic's Chrome Reverb, and it's going to be a little bit of a reverb here. All right, just to put into a space.
I can't bear to live my life alone. I grow.
All right, next, let's get to the kicks. Now there are 3 different kicks here. We'll start off with the first one. It sounds like this, so let's go over to the root node of the kick here. All right. It's like a nice sampled kick here.
I can't bear to live my life alone. I can't bear to live my life alone. I grow impatient for love, too patient for love, too cold. I can't bear to live my life alone. I grow impatient for love, too patient for love, too.
All right, next, let's get that second kick.
I can't bear to live my life alone.
Sort of like a little thumpy type of kick.
I can't bear
Just gonna duplicate that over the 4 bars.
I grow impatient for love, too patient for love, too cold.
Next, it's going around at that kick pattern, and it's gonna sound more like that yay sort of feel to it.
I can't bear to live my life alone. I grow. I can't bear to live my life alone. I grow impatient for love, too patient for love, too cold.
And then to round out this drum kit, let's add in the hi-hat. So the hi-hat's actually a really simple pattern. It's just a 2-step pattern, but the velocity is kind of go ramping up and down just to give it sort of a, make it more human, if you will.
I can't bear to live my life alone. I grow impatient.
And next, let's go and get to those guitars. Now, when it comes to guitars, I'm never too happy with the MIDI that comes stock with Logic, but we're gonna do our best to make it sound like the one in the original track. By the way, those guitars were also done by FutureSelf. So for that sound, I'm gonna bring in a new instrument track here. We'll bring in Logic Sampler, and we'll go over to the vintage Strat guitar here. Let's go and draw in that pattern and then get to some sound design. And that's just going to repeat itself over and over and over again until we get into the C sharp minor chord. So the rhythm of the pattern is essentially the same. So I'm just going to copy over this. And then what we're going to do is just put it into the, of course, the appropriate spot here. All right. And then this is going to go up. We get an E there. We're going to take that out. It's going to sound like this. All right, so that's wrong, of course. I'm going to cut that out. I'm going to duplicate that. And then that sort of rhythm strum pattern is going to be on this note right over here. we're just going to play a low C sharp on the, just like that. And let's go ahead and copy over this entire pattern. All right, and of course that goes into the next section. So I'm just going to go and close that out, and it sounds like this. But what we're going to do here is make it more human. It's way too static of a sound here. That's why I don't like to work with MIDI guitars, because it just never sounds completely good in my opinion. But it's okay, we'll do our best. We're going to select all of this, and we're going to go over to functions. We're going to go over to MIDI transform. We're going to go to random velocity, and we'll set the velocity to, we'll do a little less than 100 this time. I'm going to do a little less than 40 as well. Give a lot more variation there. All right, next, let's get to some sound design. So for one, this is a guitar, so let's make it sound like one. We're gonna bring in Logic's Amp Designer, and we're just gonna use the default setting that loads up here. And then we're gonna bring in Logic's pedal board. And we're gonna try and get the same tone to the guitar sound that we heard in the original track. I'm going to go to Logic's pedal board over here, and I'm just going to bring in two devices here. It's going to be found under modulation. I'm going to bring in the retro chorus. And then I'm going to go ahead and bring in the spin box here. All right, trust the process. Then what we're gonna do here is gonna bring in that tape delay once again. So I'm just gonna copy it over from this one right over here, give it some of that detuning that we need. We got a little flutter on this just to give it some more movement to the sound. And then we're going to go ahead and add in an octave higher, but not completely 100%. It's going to be a little mixed in there a little bit. So for that, we're going to go ahead and bring in Logic's, we'll bring in Logic's pitch shifter plugin. And what we're going to do here is pull up the semitones to 12, so it's one full octave. And we'll leave the mix to 25%. So you get all that glitter on top. Doesn't sound good yet, but we'll make it work. And now we'll make it sound a whole lot better by just filtering out some of that bottom and top end. So let's go ahead and open up our EQ. Just really focus on that sort of 1 to 3K range. Because this is really pushing the background here. All right, next let's go and layer up this guitar with another one. So I'm going to bring in a new software instrument track, and for this I'm going to bring in Logic Sculpture. Not your typical guitar plugin, but it's a really cool plugin here. Not used a lot in my opinion, but it should, because it's actually really cool. So for this, what we're going to do here is we're going to go over to plucked instruments here. We'll go over to busy plucking or buzzy plucking. Copy down this pattern. So we kind of get like a cleaner guitar type of sound or tone. And then we're going to go ahead and just add in similar effects here. So we're going to go to Amp Designer. And I'm going to bring in a preset here found under Clean. We'll bring in the small British Clean preset. Just gives a little texture to it. And then we'll just add in some filtering to the sound. So we're going to go open up our EQ. And we're going to take out a lot of the top end here, because once again, we want to focus on this range here. We'll bring in some chorus to make this a little wider. And then we're going to go ahead and bring a Logic Space Designer and use it as like a sound tool. not so much for a reverb, but you'll see what I mean in a second. So in Logic Space Designer, it has a bunch of like impulse responses that mimic sort of different type of devices, which is really cool. So what I'm going to do here is we're going to go to Warped Effects, and if you go under Analog Circuits, or sorry, Speakers, you got like a bunch of these different impulse responses, and it gives you different tones to the sound. But for this one, it's off my screen. Actually, I just got it on the screen here. It's the Transistor Radio 4. It's going to sound like this. And then we'll just put it into a reverb, sort of a typical standard type of reverb with Logic's Chroma Reverb. Just want like a small reverb, nothing too big, but make it nice and wet and drenched. And layer that with the other one. All right, so that is the sort of main part of the beat right there. Next, I'm gonna go ahead and just add in the different sections because it does get a little bit crazier. We get some chord switch ups, we get some new notes, some new patterns, and the tutorial will just drag on if I go ahead and record every single thing. So I'm gonna go ahead and just do that right now, mix it, arrange it, and we'll come back and we'll talk about it a little bit. All right, so here is the final mix and arrangement right here. So what we basically left off at is this right over here. So for this section, I did add another piano. We're using the same concert grand piano with a slightly different EQ on it, if you remember the one that we did earlier. But the piano, we added in some top notes here. All right, so that pretty much goes with the same thing over here as well. And then we get into some chord switches and a slightly different pattern over here. If you notice, I also sampled the Supremes You Can't Hurry Love over here because I couldn't quite sample the FutureSelf sample from the original track or from I Can't Wait. So I just took the section that they interpolated from the original track. Sorry, it's a little confusing. So all I did was taking that snippet here from the Supremes and I just pitched it down -6 semitones.
These precious words keeps me hanging on. I remember mama saying.
All right, so that's what the sample would have sounded like if they actually sampled the Supremes. And then from there, like I said, the chords do change here. So it's a little bit more of like a progression up to get to like a nice big crescendo moment. So here are the chords right here. So we have an A major up to a B major. We have another piano that's layered with that. A couple more top notes here. And then of course we have to move the bass pattern to match that chord progression. So we're going from the A to the B. Just so we match that progression. And then the guitar gets a little bit crazy here. This is what it looks like and sounds like.
No, you just have to wait. She said love don't come easy. It's a game of. How many heartaches must I stand before I find the love? Before I find the love.
And then the chord progression switches up ever so slightly. Over here, we go from the G sharp minor, except this time we add in a 7th, back to that C sharp minor, but just a slightly different voicing here. And then we go back into that big part here, the crescendo moment. So it's building up, building up, building up. And then we're gonna get into a quiet section right here.
No, you just have to wait. She said love don't come easy.
So for the piano, it looks like this. We're using the dark lo-fi piano preset in Logic. And we have a new organ here. Follows the same chord progression. And actually for this sound is a custom organ I designed from scratch. So this is the organ, what it looks like, the settings. I started off with the bebop organ preset, but I adjust the tone wheels over here just to make it sound like the one in the original track. So this is the settings right over here if you want to copy that. And I have another piano here just layered with that top classical piano right there, just to fill it out a bit. That same piano that we used from before, the Concert Grand.
It's a game of
And then the outro does switch up a little bit here. We get this lead pattern happening on top of everything. For that sound, I'm using Logic's Alchemy, the Aqua Mallet preset. And all I really did was just apply an EQ just to make it a little bit brighter and narrower. And that sits on top of this piano. And of course, all of the other sounds here. So that right there is the remake to Ye's I Can't Wait, remade in Logic Pro. Next, let's go ahead and take a listen to how everything sounds together.
No, you just have to wait. She said love don't come easy. It's a game of No, you just have to wait. She said love don't come easy. It's a game of
Alright, so that right there is Ye's I Can't Wait remade in Logic Pro. If you're Logic Pro users out there, I'm going to go ahead and save this entire session for you. Place it as a downloadable link below this video. You If you don't use Logic, I got your back as well. I export all the MIDI stems, audio stems, and of course include the drum kit that you heard in this remake. You can find that entire playback down below the like button as well. If you do have any questions on this or just want to chat or have any suggestions for future videos, let's chat down below. Thanks for watching. We'll catch you on the next one. Later.